People misunderstand the summum bonum. They think it's something very similar to the utilitarian greatest happiness principle. It's, in other words, an end that we constantly have in mind as we decide what to do. Kant doesn't see it like that. He says the summum bonum is a creation which we can, in a sense, imagine. If you imagine, for example, the most beautiful ocean, the most beautiful beach in the world, a silver-sanded beach somewhere in the Caribbean with palm trees and coconuts. And he says, imagine how you could contribute to building that beautiful emerald sea. And he says, you simply concentrate on the little drop that you contribute to the moral ocean. The drop that you contribute when you act according to the categorical imperative. And if you say to me, well, that's going to make no difference at all to the world at large, Kant would reply, well, the moral ocean is composed of many drops. And the more people who act according to their little contribution to that moral ocean, that ocean of goodness, the more likely it is that we'll all end up on a beach in that beautiful emerald sea in the Caribbean, even if, as he argued, that final place is sometime after death, when justice, goodness, and so on are finally perfectly formed. Okay. Kant argued that bad actions are, in essence, essentially self-contradictory. For example, when you break a promise, you undermine the very concept of promise-keeping. You contradict the logic of promising. And he calls that a pure duty, the duty to keep promises. And to break it becomes something that is logically self-contradictory. But there's another type of duty, which is an impure duty, he describes. Imagine, for example, that you play your music very loudly at 3 a.m, and this disturbs your neighbour. There's nothing that contradicts the idea of playing music in that, but it does lead to unhappy neighbours. And what Kant argues there is it's not a principle that you could will. It contradicts what most people rationally would want. That is, a good night's sleep and happy neighbours. So we have, in a sense, two ideas of self-contradiction. The contradiction in nature is the promise that is broken. It contradicts the very idea of promise-keeping. The contradiction in will, or the imperfect or impure duty, is one which rational people couldn't will because it's not the sort of neighbourliness that most of us want to experience. So far I've explained the basic ideas in Kant, that is duty, autonomy, rationality, the idea of a categorical, the idea of the summum bonum as the final end result of all our moral actions. But I want now to put all that, as it were, in a box. And the box that Kant puts it in is called the noumenal realm, spelled Noumenal. And this is the realm of the a priori, or categories that we bring to any experience that are pre-programmed into our minds. And here we've got a fundamental insight, which I believe is true to psychology, and that is that we arrange the external sensations and so on that come into our minds through our eyes, for example. We arrange them according to certain pre-programmed forms. And the way we can explain this is by way of a simple illusion. It's called the Ames Illusion. And in this illusion, it appears that a giant is shaking hands with a dwarf within a room. When we look at the illusion, as it were, through a little window, our minds cannot unscramble the illusion itself. It always appears, when they swap sides in the room, that the giant is changing places with the dwarf. And that is because, from a Kantian perspective, we have an a priori category of roomness. Our brains expect a room to have parallel lines. The floor and the ceiling are parallel to each other, and the walls are approximately straight down, whereas the Ames room is actually a rhomboid shape. It has a very, very sloping floor, and for that reason, it appears that one of the people are a giant, that's the one that's squashed up at one end, and the other person is a dwarf. Now, what Kant argues is that we always process experience by a priori categories, things that we bring to the experience that exists before, prior, a priori. For example, cause and effect. Imagine, like when I was at school, that somebody lets a bomb off in your school. That happened to me. The IRA put a bomb outside the window, I shouldn't laugh, the window of the head of the Combined Cadet Force and tried to blow him up. When you hear that bang, you assume something is causing it. So you might turn to your friend in the room and you say, that's a bomb. We've imposed cause and effect on the sensation of a loud bang. We could be wrong about that. But the idea of cause and effect comes prior to our interpretation. It's a priori. It's an a priori category. Well, morality, says Kant, is an a priori category. The process of universalizing our actions is something that we bring to any experience of an actual example. We bring the universalizing, never break your promise category to the situation of the party that we discussed earlier. Morality, said Kant, exists in the noumenal a priori realm that exists apart from and before any experience of real world or real life events.